The restaurant was one of those upscale places where the waiters refold your napkin when you go to the bathroom. My sister Diane had chosen it for this family dinner, celebrating her promotion to senior partner at her law firm. She sat at the head of the table, glowing with success. My son Trevor, 25 and perpetually underestimated, had arrived early to coordinate with the staff. He'd arranged the seating, pre-ordered Diane's favorite wine, and prepared a custom dessert with congratulatory messaging. Nobody noticed. "This place is incredible," Diane announced, gesturing at the elegant dining room. "I specifically requested this private room." The coordination it took was exhausting. I glanced at Trevor, who was studying his menu intently. He'd been the one to secure this reservation 3 months ago, when Diane mentioned her promotion was coming. She'd asked him to call the restaurant, then took full credit when the booking came through. My father raised his glass. "To Diane, who always rises to every challenge." We all clinked glasses. Trevor's smile was polite, practiced, carefully empty of any expectation. Diane's husband, Mark, leaned back in his chair. "You know what separates successful people from everyone else? The ability to handle real responsibility. Complex projects. High stakes." "Absolutely," Diane agreed. She looked pointedly at Trevor. "Some people just aren't wired for that kind of pressure." My husband, Richard, touched my leg under the table, a warning. I ignored it. "Speaking of responsibility," my mother chimed in. "Diane managed her wedding planning herself. Every detail. Remember how perfect it was." I remembered how perfect it was. I also remembered Trevor spending 6 months coordinating vendors, managing the budget, negotiating with the venue, handling the guest list crisis, and creating seating charts that satisfied Diane's complicated family politics. "It was a beautiful wedding," I said neutrally. "Beautiful because I made sure every element was executed flawlessly," Diane said. "You can't delegate that kind of thing to just anyone. It requires a specific skill set." Trevor excused himself to the restroom. I watched him go, shoulders slightly hunched, and felt something crack inside my chest. The appetizers arrived. Diane inspected hers critically. "The presentation is slightly off. When you're paying premium prices, you expect premium execution." "Everything looks wonderful to me," my mother said quickly. "That's because you don't have an eye for detail," Diane replied, not unkindly. "It's not a criticism, Mom. Some people notice these things, some people don't. It's just how brains work differently." Richard cleared his throat. "How's the new associate working out at your firm?" Diane lit up. "Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. She handled this massive case filing last week with zero supervision. That's what I look for, people who can manage complex responsibilities independently." When Trevor returned, Diane was deep into a story about her associate's accomplishments. She barely paused when he sat down. "The thing is," Diane continued, "real responsibility isn't just about showing up. It's about anticipating problems, managing multiple stakeholders, keeping everything organized under pressure. Most people completely fall apart when faced with that level of complexity." My father nodded sagely. "Your mother and I tried to instill that in all our children. Some absorbed it better than others." The implication hung in the air. Diane had absorbed it. I had partially absorbed it. Trevor, by omission, had not. "Trevor's very organized," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "Oh, I'm sure he is," Diane said in that tone people use when they're being generous. "In his own way. But there's a difference between being organized in your personal life and being able to handle serious professional responsibilities." "What exactly do you think Trevor does all day?" I asked. Diane shrugged. "Honestly, I'm not entirely sure. Something with computers? Tech support." "He's a project manager," Richard said quietly. Right, Diane waved her hand dismissively. "I'm sure that's important in its own way. But we're talking about real leadership roles. Strategic planning. Managing budgets in the millions. Client relationships. Legal implications. The kind of thing that actually requires serious capability." Trevor was cutting his food into very precise, small pieces. A thing he did when upset but trying not to show it. "Your son will never handle real responsibilities," Diane said suddenly, looking directly at me. "And I don't mean that cruelly. Some people are just better suited for support roles. There's no shame in that." The table went quiet. Even my mother, who usually rushed to smooth over any conflict, seemed frozen. Trevor set down his fork carefully. It's okay, Mom. But it wasn't okay. It had never been okay. 25 years of watching my sister casually diminish my son while taking credit for his work, and I'd stayed quiet because that's just how Diane is, and family harmony matters. Interesting perspective, I said, my voice remarkably steady. Especially since you begged him to manage your entire wedding. Diane's mouth actually dropped open. What? Trevor. You begged him to manage your wedding. Remember? March 2 years ago you called our house crying because your wedding planner quit and you had no idea what to do. You literally said, and I quote, "I need Trevor. He's the only one who can save this." I never said that. You absolutely said that. I was standing right there. You were panicking because you had 6 weeks until the wedding and no system in place. Mark looked at his wife. Honey, you told me you handled everything yourself. I did handle it, Diane said, but her voice had lost its certainty. I made all the decisions. Trevor did everything else, I continued. He coordinated with 23 vendors. He created the budget tracking that kept you from going $40,000 over budget. He visited the venue 6 times to verify setup. He managed the RSVP database and created the seating chart. He negotiated with the florist when they tried to charge triple for last-minute changes. He found a replacement string quartet when your musicians canceled. He assembled 200 welcome bags the night before because you forgot to arrange it. That's not. He negotiated with the florist when they tried to charge you triple for last-minute changes. He found a replacement string quartet when your original musicians canceled. He personally assembled 200 welcome bags the night before the rehearsal dinner because you forgot to arrange it. My father was staring at me. Is this true? Ask Mark, I said. He was there for some of it. Mark had the grace to look uncomfortable. Trevor did help quite a bit. Help. I felt my voice rising despite my best efforts. He managed the entire operation. Diane showed up to make color choices and approve menus. Trevor did the actual work of coordinating everything. I don't appreciate you rewriting history, Diane said, her lawyer voice coming out. I was very involved in my own wedding. You were involved in the fun parts. Trevor handled all the responsibilities you're now claiming only special people can manage. Dad, please, Diane said, looking at our father. Not now. This is supposed to be a celebration. Actually, my father said slowly, I'd like to hear more about this. Trevor, you coordinated Diane's wedding. Trevor looked like he wanted to disappear into his chair. I helped. He did more than help, I said. And this isn't the first time. Remember when Diane got the Hoffman case and needed someone to organize her discovery documents? That was Trevor. Remember when she bought her house and needed help managing the renovation contractors? Trevor. When she launched her home office and needed the technology setup. Trevor spent 3 weekends configuring everything. Those were small things, Diane protested. No, I said firmly. Those were real responsibilities. Complex projects with multiple stakeholders and high stakes. The exact things you just claimed he could never handle. The waiter appeared to clear our appetizer plates. The silence was excruciating. He retreated quickly. I think, my mother said carefully, perhaps we should all take a breath. No, Mom, I said. We shouldn't. Because this happens constantly. Diane dismisses Trevor while relying on him whenever she needs something managed. And we all go along with it. I have never dismissed Trevor, Diane said, but her voice shook slightly. You literally just said he'll never handle real responsibilities. At a dinner he organized. At a restaurant he booked. With a custom dessert he arranged. While sitting at a table he chose the seating chart for. Richard leaned over. Love, maybe we should. Did you arrange this dinner? My father interrupted, looking at Trevor. Trevor nodded reluctantly. All of it? The reservation, the private room, all the details. Diane asked me to, Trevor said quietly. She was busy with the promotion stuff. She sent me her preferences and I handled the logistics. Diane's face went from flushed to pale. I didn't realize you'd done quite so much. You never realize, I said. That's the problem. You ask him to handle things, he handles them perfectly, and then you tell everyone he's not capable. I don't do that. You do it constantly. At Christmas, you told Aunt Marie that Trevor struggles with complex tasks while you were literally holding the custom photo album he'd designed and printed for you. At Mom's birthday, you announced he wasn't detail-oriented, after he'd spent 6 weeks planning that surprise party. My mother shifted uncomfortably. The party was lovely. Trevor planned every element of that party, I told her. The venue, the catering, the guest list, coordinating everyone's schedules, arranging the photo slideshow. Diane brought a cake. A very nice cake, Diane said weakly. You're missing the point, I said. The point is that you consistently underestimate Trevor while depending on his abilities. And then you announce to the family that he'll never handle real responsibilities. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? Diane was silent for a long moment. The entrees arrived. Nobody moved to eat them. I think, Trevor said quietly, maybe I should go. No, my father said firmly. Stay. We all looked at him in surprise. Dad rarely intervened in family conflicts. Diane, he said, his voice serious, your mother and I raised you better than this. Dad, you were just putting your nephew down in front of the entire family. Again, apparently. And using his own work to celebrate yourself while claiming he's not capable of that same work. He looked at Trevor. I owe you an apology. We all do. It's fine, Trevor said automatically. It's not fine, Dad said. You've been managing complex projects for this family for years and we've treated it like nothing. Like you're doing the bare minimum instead of going above and beyond constantly. I don't do it for recognition, Trevor said. Which is exactly why you deserve some, Dad replied. He looked at Diane. You need to apologize. Genuinely. Diane's eyes were shining with tears. I'm sorry, Trevor. I really am. I didn't realize I was doing that. You did realize, I said quietly. You just didn't care because it was convenient not to. That's harsh, my mother protested. But accurate, Richard said, surprising everyone. I've watched this for years. Trevor does incredible work. Diane takes credit or dismisses it. It needed to be said. Diane wiped her eyes with her napkin. I do appreciate everything you do, Trevor. I guess I assumed you knew that. How would he know that when you constantly tell him and everyone else that he's not capable? I asked. I never meant it that way. She trailed off. Just what? I don't know. Maybe I was threatened? You're right that I rely on him. Maybe it was easier to pretend he was just being helpful rather than admit that he's better at this than I am. The admission hung in the air. Trevor looked at his aunt with something like pity. You're really good at your job, Aunt Diane. You don't have to put me down to prove that. I know, she said softly. I'm sorry. Really, truly sorry. The dinner limped forward after that. The conversation was stilted, uncomfortable. Diane kept trying to make things normal again, but the dynamic had fundamentally shifted. When the custom dessert came out, beautifully presented with congratulatory script in chocolate, Diane actually thanked Trevor out loud. It was a small thing, but it mattered. In the parking lot afterward, my father pulled Trevor aside. I watched them talk, saw Dad's hand on Trevor's shoulder. What did Grandpa say? I asked when Trevor returned to our car. He offered me a consulting job managing projects for his company. Paid position, not a family favor. That's wonderful, Richard said. Yeah, Trevor smiled, a real smile. He said I clearly have skills that should be properly utilized and compensated. On the drive home, Trevor was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Thanks, Mom, for saying something. Finally. I should have said it years ago, I replied. I'm sorry I didn't. Better late than never, I guess. The next day Diane called. I've been thinking about last night. And I owe Trevor more than just an apology. I'd like to hire him as a consultant for my firm. We're terrible at project management and he's obviously brilliant at it. Actual salary, not a family discount. You should ask him directly, I said. I will. But I wanted to make sure you knew I was serious about changing how I treat him. After we hung up, I thought about years of staying quiet, smoothing things over, protecting Diane's feelings at Trevor's expense. Family harmony had seemed important. But maybe some harmony wasn't worth maintaining if it came at the cost of someone's dignity. Trevor could decide for himself whether to work with Diane. Whether to forgive her completely. Whether to trust that things would really be different. But at least now everyone knew the truth. At least now his capabilities were acknowledged rather than dismissed. It wasn't a perfect resolution. Diane's attitudes wouldn't change overnight. The family dynamics were still complicated. But it was a start. And sometimes a start is enough. That evening, Trevor showed me an email from Diane formally offering him a consulting contract with an impressive salary. "What do you think?" I said carefully, "that you should do whatever feels right to you. No obligation to forgive, no pressure to accept." He read the email again. "She did acknowledge specific projects I've managed. Using actual details. That's new." "It is. Maybe people can change," he said thoughtfully. "Maybe," I agreed. "But they don't change unless someone makes them see the truth first." He smiled at me. "Thanks for being that someone." "Always," I said. "Even when it takes me too long to find the courage." Trevor eventually accepted Diane's consulting offer, with clear boundaries and professional expectations. Whether their relationship fully healed I couldn't say. But at least it started from a place of honesty rather than polite fiction. And at least Trevor knew that someone in the family was willing to defend him, even when it made dinner uncomfortable. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to stay quiet anymore, even if it ruins the meal.